Well, welcome to the Hope a Thing, a Native American podcast where we discuss focused topics within tribal housing and self-determination. I'm Melissa Atkins, the Training and Development Coordinator, and with me is Brooke Warrington, the Training and Development Specialist. Today we'll be talking about financial literacy in honor of International Financial Independence Awareness Day with our special guest, Chantay Moore. Chantay is Navajo African American and has an MBA and certified financial educator with over 15 years of financial industry experience and 10 years experience teaching financial literacy workshops. She has also been on our webinars and our podcast in the past. So if you like to listen to more of Chantay, we'll have those links at the bottom. Chantay, could you go ahead and just tell us a little more about yourself before we get started on today's wonderful topic?
Thank you so much, Owissa. I really appreciate that introduction. So I've been doing this for quite a while. I specialize in teaching financial education workshops to adult learners. We find that as adults, the way we handle money, we've learned those habits over decades, 20, 30, 40 years. And so my challenge and what I enjoy doing is coming in and saying, hey, let's think about money differently. And I've been so blessed to have opportunities to work with many tribal nations and tribal organizations like Native Learning Center and teaching these financial concepts, making it very simple for tribal members and communities, because sometimes we feel like sometimes when you think about money and finances and investing, it can be this big, complicated world, and it is. And so I really take pride in bringing this information in a very simple and understandable, but most importantly, practical approach. So folks can say, you know what? Not only did I learn something, I know what to do next. I can take steps and, just really building out their confidence. So thank you all again for having me for today's session.
Absolutely. So, we had read that financial literacy is the number one economic crisis in the world. Do you want to speak a bit more to how being financially illiterate hurts us?
Yeah, for sure. When our company conducts many surveys, or not even just our company, many financial institutions, and we have in our company, we have a simple 5-question quiz. And what we found is that most people can only answer up to 3 questions correctly. And when we look at financial literacy being an economic crisis, over 5 billion people are financially illiterate. So it's not just a United States issue, this is worldwide. And when it comes to money, what I find is that a lot of people are like, well, it's so complex, it's so complicated. I don't need to learn about it. That's only for wealthy people. Only people who actually have money can, need to learn about it. And that's so not true. You ever heard the term ignorance is bliss? And when it comes to money, ignorance is not bliss. It actually can cost you a lot. Again, by having that misconception that only the wealthy and the privileged actually need to have this information. And it's a luxury that none of us can afford to not have, which is to become financially educated. Because when we're not financially educated, we can become victims of scams. We fall prey to a lot of schemes, especially like with social media. There's tons of people who are promoting the next hot investment, or put your money with me and I'll double it. you know we we get caught up in this lifestyle of earning money but spending money. We know how to make money, but we know how to spend it. We don't save it, and that really just hinders our ability to build wealth and achieve any financial goals. I really want to help people to start dreaming again, start thinking of a future where they're not just surviving, but they're thriving. They're not just making ends meet, but they're actually creating a legacy. And you really can only do that by acquiring financial literacy, by becoming financially educated. And that way you can make informed choices. You can pave, you can really start working towards a brighter financial future, which is what I think a lot of people want. I always encourage folks, like, just imagine the freedom that you receive, the security that you have when you have a solid understanding of money management, when you're investing wisely, when you're taking advantage of opportunities to grow your wealth. You're really taking control of your finances. And I think a lot of people don't realize that they need to take control and not just, kind of be aimlessly wandering when it comes to our finances. So it hurts us when we don't get financially educated.
Couldn't agree more. I appreciate how you kind of break everything down into like small bite-sized pieces. So it's not so overwhelming because financial literacy can be overwhelming at times, but it's
Mhm.
very important as you stated. So can you please tell us what does it mean to be financial literate?
Yeah, always so financially literacy, when you're financially literate, you basically you have the ability to understand and effectively apply financial skills. So this would be such as budgeting, this could be investing, this could be managing money. But not only take having the skills, but you're using those skills to make informed and responsible financial decisions. And I also say that you can apply this to any level of wealth, income, any assets you think you have, because sometimes people also make the misconception of, I need more to do that. And I don't think that's the case. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, very poor. My mother and father didn't have anything. God bless their hearts, but we made do with what we had. And I truly think no matter what your level of financial resources are, you can still have the skill set and the knowledge to make wise and strategic financial decisions. Even if you just have $5 to your name or $5,000, you know exactly what to do with no with whatever resources you have. I always tell people like every dollar should have a job, no matter if it's paying a bill or saving for retirement. That $1 is super important. And when you're financially literate, you know exactly what to do with it. You know exactly what not to do with it. So that's what I believe is that you also have some financial well-being behind that, because even if you might feel not that you're not where you want to be financially, you still have a level of comfort of saying, you know what, even with the resources I do have, I know I'm making the right decisions. I know I'm doing it okay and I'm not wasting it away. That's what true financial literacy means. And you're educated and you know exactly what to do with every single dollar you have.
I love the way you put that about like managing every single dollar. My dad was very, very not strict necessarily, but very like matter of fact. And the one thing he taught me growing up was, 10% of every paycheck goes into your personal savings. But in my 20s, there was a while where I was kind of like, okay, I did my 10%, and now the rest of the money, woohoo! And
Hmm.
that's not the way you should think about it. And thankfully, like as I get older, I learn like more and more and more about, how to be more responsible with my money. But I like that idea of really focusing in on making sure every single dollar is working for you, not just the
Hmm.
10%, guys. It doesn't mean
Hmm.
party with the rest of it. It doesn't mean, go on shopping sprees, buy shoes like I was. So
And
I
that's
love that you
okay.
made that point.
Yeah, and I always tell folks, just to speak to that, Brooke, like, don't beat yourself up over that. If and thankfully you had a parent who could tell you that much, who at least gave you that one piece of advice that you could follow. But the reality is, we don't learn about this in school. Most, this is probably the one thing everybody deals with, money, every day, day in, day out, and we have nowhere where we learn about it. So if you don't typically come from a family that talks about money regularly and educates each other about money, how else are we going to learn? We learn through our trials and errors. So at least you recognize to say, you know what, I might have made those maybe not so great financial decisions then, but now I know better. So I always encourage people to, like, don't blame your family, don't blame your circumstances. For a lot of folks, we just don't have the education or the know-how of what to do and what not to do.
Excellent, excellent point. Do you think that it's important for people to work with a financial professional?
I do. I've been starting to talk about this more recently because, you know, what I find, I have my own private practice where I work one on one with hundreds of clients all across the country. And what I find is that a lot of people, when they do want to handle their finances or build wealth or start investing, they try to go at it alone. I always tell people, think about it like any area of our lives, when we're looking to improve and take ourselves to the next level, we typically will engage a professional. For example, if you're sick and you have a disease that you want to overcome, who do we go to? We go to medical professionals. If you're trying to lose weight and get in shape, who do we go to? We go to dietitians and maybe a personal trainer. If you need legal advice, you're not going to go to the court and file all the documents. You go to a professional, a lawyer, an attorney who could give you professional guidance. Why don't we do that when it comes to our finances? It's like, oh, I'll just do it on my own and I don't need anyone to help me. And I would say a part of the reason that a lot of folks maybe don't necessarily seek guidance is because they feel that they can't, or they don't qualify, or a financial professional wouldn't work with him. And I would say that's a bad part on the financial industry, because has largely been the case where they would only focus on, and when I'm talking about they, I'm talking about financial professionals. They would typically only focus on people who had money. I remember working at when I first got into this industry, the first company that I worked with said, "Oh, don't talk to that person if they don't have $250,000 or more in assets." And I was like you, Brooke. I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, who is that? I don't have those people in my life. I don't have the rich uncle. I don't know anyone who has that type of money." So it was very disheartening. And I would say, that's a responsibility that the financial industry has to accept and acknowledge. But now there's so much information, there's so many resources. You just have to find it. Like the company that I work with, we all offer financial guidance at no cost. No cost at all. We give you the time and education and hope that you'll make informed decisions. So I say all that to say is that there are times have changed. There's so many resources. Yes, you can go to YouTube and graduate from YouTube University and learn all about investing and the hot stock of the week. But really, it's so important to work with a professional, number one, who has the credentials and expertise to really give you personalized guidance. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is that yes, you can find, an awesome social media video or an awesome YouTube channel that might talk about certain things you're interested in, but they're not talking specific to you. They're talking about a greater audience, a huger population, and they're giving like blanket information. When you're working with a professional, they are talking to you directly. They're learning about you, your family, your finances, your income, your goals. Because, Awista, your life is completely different from Brooke's life, which is completely different from my life. So we would all have different financial goals and strategies that we would implement. And that's what a professional can really bring to the table. On top of that, the last thing I'll mention of why I highly encourage folks to work with professionals is that that professional also has experience that you don't have. They have knowledge, they have, like I said, credentials, they have education, they have access to financial products that you can't get on your own, and you should leverage that. If someone is willing to educate you and assist you, why not leverage it, or at least have someone that you can call and provide guidance and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you agree? Do you think this there's a different option?" Like let's leverage the professionals and appreciate their level of expertise that they bring to the table, especially when it comes to your money. Like if you make a financial goal, you should want to hit it. And I think a professional will definitely help you get on track to make sure you achieve that goal.
Thank you very much for that. It is important to have goals. And do you think that most of the time that people won't seek a financial professionals because maybe of like embarrassment, or personally in my family, it was kind of like taboo to speak about money. It wasn't until that I was an adult and I moved out that it kind of I guess clicked for my mom and I like, oh, well, what do I do? Like, I'm no longer 17. Like, I'm on my own. I have my house. Like, I have bills to pay. I have groceries to get. Like, it did get very overwhelming for a while. And I think my mom realized, like, the kind of the damage it did by kind of making it seem like it was taboo to speak about it, when in reality, it's not at all. Um, can you speak a little more about that for those who feel like they can't really speak about it?
Yeah, I think it certainly is true that a lot of folks do have embarrassment about their financial situation, and it absolutely is taboo. And I've seen this across many cultures, not only our native cultures, African American cultures. To be honest, it's like when I was a child, how dare I ask my mother and father how much
Hmm.
money they made or what their income was? Like, no, you just didn't do that. And again, their parents did the same thing to them. And I think we do live in a world where it's not an option to not educate and talk to our children about financial education, financial literacy. That's a whole nother topic in itself, but we do have to recognize that, we have to break those cycles. And we're talking generations of families who may have struggled through those generations. And it is challenging for someone to say, you know what, my grandma has struggled, my grandparents struggled, my parents struggled, I'm struggling. And it's hard to reach out for help in some of those situations. And some of that is behavioral coaching, financial coaching that sometimes I have to do with clients, or there's plenty of resources out there that can help folks really just start to develop positive relationships with money. because like even to one thing I noticed, like even within our native culture, sometimes we look at money as a bad thing because we know what's happened to our ancestors. We know how other people capitalize off of our resources, and obviously a lot of harm was caused. So that's a lot of trauma in itself that's embedded in us, literally in our blood and genes, to overcome. So yeah, I would say a lot of folks just maybe, because like for example, I meet with clients who are a little older. They're in their 50s and 60s, and when I meet with them, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Shantae, I'm so embarrassed. I don't have any money saved. I know I should have more, and I know that at my age, they feel like they should be much further ahead financially." And I have to tell them, like, look, at the end of the day, a really good financial professional is not going to judge you. Our job is to help you. That's just like if you're trying to lose weight and you're severely obese and overweight, that doctor isn't going to like, shame on you, you did this and you did that, you shouldn't have gotten yourself to this point. Same thing in our field as well. So I would encourage folks, like, that's the whole point of, you want to do better, go ahead and be honest and open about your finances with a professional, and really tell them where you're coming from. Because when someone opens up, just like the way which you did, or what's the when you open up and said, this is what my family went through. This is the things that that's something that I need to know, that helps me to help you, is when someone is really can be vulnerable and share those things with me. Because guess what? I'll tell you the same thing. My mom and dad were poor. They we didn't talk about money. I didn't even know I was growing up poor. And so I think that helps break down those barriers to let folks know that, especially with for me personally, like, I can relate to you, and I can show you how I've been able to achieve, financial success, because I started off at the bottom, and now I'm working my way to a brighter future. And I'm changing this for my children, my children and their children, any future generations of the Moors will never experience this. And I'm proud to say that. So I want to, in my conversations, also encourage people to say, be that change. And that first part of that change is, breaking beyond the embarrassment and breaking beyond the taboo that is, we don't talk about money, we don't share about our finances to anyone else.
That's so beautiful to be willing to share your own history and your own struggles with it so that you can connect with your clients, regardless of like the age that people are or the story that they're coming in with, their financial history. Are there, as they start this journey to become more financially aware, to become more financially secure, are there different like milestones that they can expect to kind of hit along the way to independence?
Yeah, so our company, we have an approach where we help people, give them a roadmap, basically. Like, a lot of people will come and say, okay, Shantae, I'm all in, I want to do better. How do I do that? So we use an approach called the 7 money milestones approach, which I could talk about individually, because what folks need is, they just need a roadmap. They just need, like, tell me what to do. I have the resources. What should I do? What should I do first? And that's what we use as far as our roadmap to helping give people, like, boom, boom, boom. These are the steps. And I always tell folks, as I start talking about these different milestones, is that I've never met any person in life, and I've worked with really probably thousands of people at this point across my career. And not one person, not one, have I ever met that had completed all 7 of the milestones. Even the wealthiest person, even the person who you would think is the richest person, they have it all figured out. They often don't. A lot of people, they can do well, they can save well, they can make great income, but again, they might not know this one thing is missing, this one thing is missing. And that's our approach to, how we help folks understand what they need to work on when it comes to their finances.
So Shantae, what is the first milestone?
Well, the first money milestone is getting a financial education. And it seems like super, like, straightforward and like, duh, you should become financially educated. But I also encourage folks, get the right education, go to the good, find really good resources. So the company I work with, called How Many Works, we wanted to start a platform and create an education, and really just start educating individuals all across the country in offices, basically our learning centers all across the country. And we were like, what can we use? What resources out there? And we really didn't find anything good. You know what I mean? Like, there's some stuff out there. I'm not saying like there's nothing, but it was either too complicated and too like way beyond people's ability to understand, or it was too simple, like too simple. It was just the basic balance a checkbook, like nobody deals with checks anymore, or just save a little extra money, and that was it. So we created our own platform. We use a book. This book is called How Many Works, Stop Being a Sucker, and I'm happy to direct folks to how to get a free copy of this. We actually have an amazing ebook that I want to share with everyone as well. So we basically created our own book, our own presentations, our own financial platform to educate people. I always tell folks, if you read this book, or even if you read the ebook cover to cover, it'll take you about an hour. You'll learn more about money than 99% of the population. Literally, you will learn so much about money. And one thing I love about our book, because mind you, I've been in this industry for a while. All the other books that I worked with were like really big, they were very complicated, too hard to understand. This book makes it simple, it makes it easy to understand complex topics. So, this was something that we use. We actually also came out with a book last summer called How Many Works for Women, which is even more unique. And I'll be happy to send you both a copy of this because with women, and obviously we're all women here, but we deal with different financial situations compared to our male counterparts. We're the ones who are dealing with our sick children and parents. We're the ones who take time off from work. We're the ones who don't save as much as men. So I can go on and on about women's statistics. So we came out with our second book. So I always tell folks, get the resources. The financial education is so important. We live in a time where there's so much information. You can't say I don't have the opportunity to learn. I don't have the resources that's out there. But with milestone number one, the education is important. The second part is also, like we talked about, is working with a professional. Take the education that you learn, whether it's in our books and our resources, and take that information to a professional who can now help you. Because, like I always tell folks that I work with, like, I don't want you to do something just because Shantae says it and because you trust me, and I appreciate that. But I want you to do it because you understand it. You know exactly how that financial solution works, and you know exactly the goal that is going to help you accomplish and achieve. And that all comes with being financially educated and having a financial professional guide you.
All right, so I have my How Many Works book. I've read it, I've consulted a
Yes.
professional, I've gone to reputable sources. What would be my next step? What's the next milestone?
Yes, so now we need to start thinking about what are the practical things that I can start doing. It's now we're taking it out of our head and actually putting the pen to the paper and starting to put plans into place. And so when I think about helping someone achieve financial stability, I want you to envision like we're building a house. When you're building a house, what do we start with? We start with the foundation. We start with the ground layer first, and then we build up the frame, and then the roof is the last thing that we put on. So think of that the same with your finances. And so when we're building a financial foundation, the first step in doing so, that foundation, is having proper protection. So that's milestone number two. And so that word protection and the way that we use it is really talking about all things insurance. We're talking about life insurance. Do I have health insurance? Maybe disability insurance, long term care insurance, just the insurance. When we think about insurance, it protects the what if that can happen in life. Think about it. I mean, I have my cell phone here, my iPhone. God forbid I lose my iPhone, like it's the end of the world, right? But I have insurance on it so that I can get it replaced. Same thing if I have a house. Oissa, you mentioned I have a house now. We have mortgage insurance because if I can't pay the mortgage, or if, God forbid, something happens to my home, there's insurance to replace that. We have insurance, so it's not an uncommon thing that we deal with. We deal with this on cars and anything of value, but we often don't think of how that can help us personally and financially. And that's where life insurance is really the first conversation. You are your greatest asset to your family. Your ability to earn an income and to provide financial resources to your family is the greatest asset that you can provide to them. So, why do we not protect it? If something happens to me, I'm a single mother of three children. If something happens to me, who's going to maintain that financial provision for my children? It's not like the money will just come out of nowhere. So that's where life insurance is important. If you have a spouse and a partner and they're the primary breadwinner, if they're no longer here, or maybe not even if they're no longer here, what if they get sick? What if they get injured and they can't work? that's when we have those insurances that can come in place to replace that economic value that you can no longer provide, whether it's because you can't work or because you're no longer here. And I found too that this is something that's taboo to talk about as well. We don't talk about death. We don't talk about, especially in our native cultures. It is like, especially in my Navajo culture, it's very taboo to talk about death and things of that nature. But it happens. It's not if it happens, it's when it happens. And I always tell folks that's the one thing that can financially devastate a family is when they lose a loved one. Those financial resources are no longer coming in, and now they're struggling like nothing beyond before. Whereas if they had proper life insurance, at least there would have been some financial resources there. And that's the reality. I've seen people lose their homes. I've seen children no longer can go to college because, the breadwinner passed away. There's so many, again, there's so much financial devastation that can happen when we don't have insurance, because then now you see the GoFundMe's come up on social media. You see, we're selling Indian taco plates, and it's, I'm not trying to judge those families that have to do that. That's a reality, but it's because they were forced to, because they didn't have the financial means to take care of those final expenses. So it's so important that this is the first thing, because we can't predict when a sickness can occur. We can't predict when a premature death can occur. So that's why you want to protect it first, because once those life events happen, we want to absolve the financial devastation that can happen. We don't want the financial devastation. We want us to maintain the lifestyle that we had for our families, at least when we're no longer here or able to do so.
Thank you for sharing that. I was actually gonna mention that it was also taboo. And have you personally, when talking with your like clients and dealing with everyone, is there a way that you're able to kind of like help break through that fear of not planning for after death and not having a will in place? And because I know that it can be really hard talking about that with your young ones and your children and even grandchildren. How do you work through that with your clients?
Yeah, and for sure, it often takes multiple conversations, because some people are very adverse to it at first. It's uncomfortable. It's not a comfortable conversation to even think about. Oh my God, what if something happens to me and I'm no longer here for my children? So I really just tie it into their desires and their goals. At the end of the day, if you have a family, and even if you're single, a lot of us have a legacy that we want to leave behind. There's greater things in life that we hope to accomplish or to do or to even help others. And the one way that we can accomplish that is by having life insurance available to leave to our children. So for example, let's say I'm working with a grandmother and she's, very adverse to talking about death and whatever the case might be, but she's very open and honest and talking to me about her grandchildren and her children, and I want my house paid off, and they have these bigger visions. And I tell them, well, if something happens today, those dreams and visions, they won't come to reality. But if we have the proper protection in place, your children will remember their grandmother who left them an inheritance. Your children will remember, your grandchildren will remember their grandmother who was able to pay off her home and keep it in the family line. So that's the way that I normally approach it, is just from the what's your ultimate goal? What's your ultimate legacy? And this, insurance, life insurance is just a tool to help us get there. Because otherwise, if we, you can try and save all the money in the world, but you probably won't get there otherwise. So I think once they see, okay, you know what, this isn't just a, about a bad event happening in life, some good can come from it. I always tell folks, insurance is the only way to turn pennies into dollars. Most times your family will receive a hundredfold from a policy versus what you actually put into it. And, when we really think about that, I think a lot of people, they open up a little bit more and they get more into the idea of saying, you know what, okay, this is something that I could probably learn more about. And if they truly understand the value of all different types of insurances, and again that comes with the education, then they would be more open to learning about it and seeing how they can implement it for themselves and their families.
Thank you. So once they have their protection and once they apply it, what is the next step?
So the next step is milestone number 3 is establishing your emergency fund. And I think any professional, like we hear this all the time, right? Like you need to have money on the side for the emergencies. And it's true. It really is. I think the one thing that I'll add to that particular milestone is that you don't have to save up, because I mean, the recommendation, depending on who you're talking to, could be, oh, have 3 months of your expenses saved or have 6 months of your expenses saved. I don't think you need to have that big amount because that's thousands of dollars potentially. I always tell folks, at least just start putting the money aside. Just start having that, a little bit go to your emergency fund on a regular basis, and then we can move on. Because a lot of times people, they start saving the money and then they spend it for whatever reason, and then they don't replenish it, and then another emergency comes up, and then that's when they're in trouble and they're relying on credit cards. So the milestone number 3 is just getting in the habit of setting some money aside for those emergencies. And even if you have, let's say you have no debt, that could even just be using the balance that's available on your credit card. And that's another strategy. I don't think it all has to be sitting in a bank account. I don't think it has to be cash under your mattress. It could be many things. But the whole idea is that you want to just develop a cushion for yourself so that if something comes up, you have the funds and available resources to tap into. So we just want to start working on that. And then eventually you'll get to building up that 3 months or, 6 months of reserves that you desire to have.
I'm really lucky that that was the other thing that my dad really drilled in. He calls it pillow for incidentals.
Mm,
But he always really stressed that. And his thinking was, you never know what's going to happen with your car. And I'll say
mhm.
over the years, there have been so many times where something went wrong with my car, thus, leaving me unable to get to work, unable to do, the things that I need to do. And that pillow for incidentals has, given me the means to be able to like carry that unexpected expense. And I know I forget what the exact number is, but there's a really scary statistic about how many American families can handle like a surprise cost of $400 or more, and that like most households that they literally like they can't be able to like hold that kind of a hit. Like anything over
Yeah.
$400 can literally like break them and derail their financial processes that are in place at that time. And that's such a scary statistic, you guys. It's so scary.
Yeah.
And that idea of like growing that pillow for incidentals and then replenishing it when you do have to use it is so, so, so important.
Yeah, we actually have that statistic in our book. I was looking down. It's on page 9. It says that 44% of Americans don't have enough to carry a $400 emergency, and that is scary. Whereas something happened, it could derail everything, and that's why I love that pillow for incidentals because sometimes. It helps to make money fun as well, and emergency fund can be like, oh, here we go again, emergency fund. It can be boring, but I really love that pillow for incidental. So I might start using that, Brooke. Another great tidbit from your father.
Okay, so once we've got that, what is the now fourth step? Fourth
Yes.
milestone? Yes.
Yeah, we're on number 4. So the fourth money milestone is managing debt. So we just talked a little bit about the not having $400 to carry. 44% of Americans don't have $400. 38% of households in America have credit card debt. They also have loan payments. 43% of borrowers are not making payments on their loans that they have. So debt isn't a major issue. I would say probably one in every 2 conversation that I have with folks is I'm up to my eyeballs in debt. What do I do? How do I get out of it? I feel like I'm trying to pay it off and it's not working. So in our classes, we teach various methods on how to get a hold of your debt. And I think the big part of that is first recognizing, like, and just really out itemizing and putting it on paper. What debt do I have? Like, it can get to a point where you have like so many credit cards, you have so many loans, so many things that you might have forgotten about. Another part of that is like, okay, what's the interest rates that I'm paying? What are the minimum payments? I think that in itself is so key. I can't tell you how many people have no clue how their debt is growing, how it's getting out of control. We teach a financial concept called the rule of 72, which can help folks calculate that if you have debt, basically, I'll tell you real quickly. The rule of 72 is a quick mental calculation to say, if I maintain this balance, how long will it take to double? So, like, say, for example, if you have a credit card, any debts that we have to pay it back. with interest. There's a cost to borrowing the money on the credit card. So the rule of 72 says take the interest rate that you're paying back, divide it into the number 72, and that will tell you how many years your debt will double. So if you have, let's say you have a personal loan and it's at a 9% interest rate, you take 9, divide that into 72. So 72 divided by 9 means that if you don't pay that personal loan off, your debt, that loan will double, that balance will double in 8 years. It's pretty scary. And so a lot of people, they don't like, even just having that financial concept. When I learned it, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, like now I'm looking at my money differently. So just even understanding the interest rate, how much am I actually paying back? When you have a mortgage, that's amortized. When you buy real estate, you're not paying the principal off for a really long time, really toward the the latter end of that loan. So those are things that we just teach people, is like, let's just understand the numbers and how they work. And then if you have the extra financial means, let's attack one debt at a time. Whether that's paying the debt with the smallest balance off first, which is the debt snowball, or it could be paying the balance with the highest interest rate off first. Either one will accomplish the goal, but we just put a plan in place. I always tell people the one thing you don't want to do is just be like aimlessly throwing money at all of your debt. You want to strategically identify, what debts do I have, which one should I pay off first, and put all of your extra money toward that one debt, and just maintain minimum payments on everything else. Because then once that one debt is paid off, now you have that extra money to apply toward the second debt, and then the next debt, and it just goes on. That's the debt snowball, or even call it debt avalanche method. There's a debt payoff strategy called velocity banking. This is where we throw lump sum amounts of money toward our debt, and we're able to pay it down and combat the interest. So those are things that we hope to educate people about, and just put a plan in place. Milestone number 4 is not pay off all your debt and then do everything else. It's manage your debt. Just start understanding it, getting a plan in place, and attacking it little by little. And so once you have your insurance, you have your emergency fund started, now we have a plan in place for debt, then you can move on to the rest of the milestones.
I love that you refer to it as a plan for your debt as opposed to just like paying it all off. Because for a lot of us, the debt that we've accrued, whether that be credit card debt, whether that be student loans, it's
Hmm.
really, it's big sums where that idea that I'm just going to be able to like pay it off, in a couple months of behaving and eating ramen, like it's just not really feasible. So to kind of shift that thinking into being able to like manage it well, being able to be strategic about it, understanding that it is still going to be, a journey, but at
Hmm.
least I have like a plan in mind. Maybe I can't see the light just yet, but I know like it's that way. I think that's so
Yes,
like comforting to people, especially like when I think about it, because my student loans, it's a lot. And if I think
I know.
about the amount, especially with how the interest is working, it's like, oh my gosh, it's racking up faster than I can pay it off. So
Yeah.
being able to be strategic about it and knowing that it's like, I might not be able to pay it off tomorrow, but I have a plan. I think there is like some great, great comfort in that, and being able to feel like at least I'm working towards something and it's going to get there. Because for most of
Yes.
us, yeah, our debt can't be paid off, tomorrow, unfortunately. So I like that idea of being strategic and focusing as opposed to just, you know, hoping I'm paying off enough and it'll just go away one day.
Yeah, and I like that you use the word journey, because it is a journey. It's not, we live in a culture, in a world where everything is super fast. You literally like put an order in for food and it's delivered to you in 10 minutes. Like, we have this instant gratification, this, super fast, everything is quick and it arrives right away. When it comes to your finances, especially paying off debt or even building wealth, which is the next money milestone, it is a journey. And I think that also comes back to letting people know, like, look, we're like, you got to where you are financially from a decades of how you are handling your money, 10, 20 years, maybe even longer. It's not going to be magically fixed overnight. It is a journey. Maybe it'll take us a couple years to get there, but at least you're doing it right. You're doing it strategically, and you're making wise decisions.
All right. So once we are kind of in a mindset, we are being strategic about our debt, we're managing it, we're getting through it day by day. What is going to be our next step?
Yes, so money milestone number 5 is increasing your cash flow. Sometimes it's not like, a lot of people think, like you mentioned a little bit, eating ramen noodles and, really just going bare bones minimum. And sometimes we don't have to do that because even though it's a journey, even though you do have to make some sacrifice to improve your finances. I don't think we need to be like completely like I'm not going out. I'm not spending anything. Like, you know how people say, oh, don't buy that Starbucks cup. Like, that $5 is not going to be detrimental to me right now. So, oftentimes, the solution is just we need to bring in more income, which is milestone number 5 is increasing your cash flow. So, we live in an economy where there's people, we live in a gig economy. So, a gig economy is where people have a lot of side jobs, they're doing side part-time businesses outside of their primary source of employment or income. Maybe they're bringing in income from multiple sources. They're doing food deliveries and or they're baking food and selling it, or maybe they're a lash technician on the side and working a full-time job. I see that a lot of solutions to people's financial problems is they're not necessarily overspending. They're not necessarily like I don't think most people are just like, I'm going on shopping sprees and I'm charging up everything. Like a lot of people really just aren't doing that. The reality is they just need more money coming into the household. So we look at, okay, what can you do? What can you bring in? Can you start a business part time? I love the company that we work with because we champion folks, working part time as contractors or, maybe starting a passion business where they can make income from it. We help encourage folks to let's look at other ways we can bring in more money into the household. The other part of that is learning how to manage your expenses. So when I say manage expenses, again, I'm not buying nothing ever for myself. I'm not treating myself, but it is, having a spending plan. It is making sure that if I'm going to go on a vacation, let me make sure I save up for it. Let me make sure that I have the funds and resources for it. A couple quick things to manage your expenses are like during the pandemic, a lot of people subscribed to a lot of subscription services because we were all at home. So, like, do we still need those things? Like those little things will add up month to month. That 2.99, for Hulu, or that gym membership that we don't use anymore, or whatever it might be. Like that's one way to free up some money. You can change your exemptions on your paycheck, which means that less money is being taken out for taxes. Sometimes that could be a strategic move. Talk to your tax professional and see if that makes sense. If you're a homeowner, if you have some equity in your home, you might be able to drop the PMI insurance. So there's little things that folks can do, even just with their current financial situation, that could help lower their expenses. Like especially like if you even have car insurance, um, change it to a higher deductible. Like most people get like a $500 deductible, increase that to $1,000 deductible. That will lower your car insurance costs. So there's so many like little tidbits too that we help people look at. Like, okay, what can we cut out? Like, what do we no longer need that we're paying for? And what other strategic moves can we use to reduce our expenses? But the main thing is, what else can we do also to bring in more income into our household?
I love the small, like, little bite sizes that you have laid out for everyone. I personally have high anxiety, and I'm sure there's many other listeners that have high anxiety when it comes to money. And like just having those small little goals set up or oh my god, they help instrumentally. Like it just helps. So being able to pay off those things that you may not necessarily need. Like I personally had a whole bunch of subscriptions that I forgot I was even paying for. So
Mhm.
that saved me once I realized like, oh my gosh, like knowing where every dollar goes really does help you in the long run. So thank you for making everything so easy to digest. What is step number 6?
So milestone number 6 is called building wealth. So this is the fun part of money. I call it the sexy side of money because a lot of folks, when they think of I'm saving, I'm investing, I'm getting into the stock market, I'm, putting money in my 401k, like they feel like they're actually doing something with their money, right? And that's what milestone number 6 is building wealth. This is when we look at how am I, maximizing my workplace retirement accounts. A lot of people have access. I mean, I would say most people have access to something like a 401k or 403b, whatever, depends on where you work at. But, am I maximizing those accounts that are benefits provided to me by my job? One, let's look at that. If I have extra money to save, now, mind you, milestone number 6 is after we've gotten life insurance, after we started our emergency fund, after we put a plan in place to pay off some debt. Like those three things have to be in place first. And then if I have extra money after doing all those things, how can I invest it in the stock market? Because this is where you really grow wealth. Beyond using your bank. Your bank is great for maybe your emergency fund, paying your bills. I don't think banks are great places to build wealth. You really have to get into the stock market. This is why it's important to have a professional help you, whether it's, saving money for retirement, saving money for your children or grandchildren to go to college. Maybe you're saving money to put a down payment on a house a year or two from now, or to purchase a new car. Whatever your financial goal is, this is where we can have some fun with it and start like, okay, how can I start investing? How do I deal with stocks, bonds, mutual funds? There's so many options out there. But on top of that, not just investing, another big important factor of building wealth is understanding taxes. Yes, taxes. A lot of people don't factor in taxes when it comes to their investment accounts that they have, or even they don't even understand how their 401k at their job is taxed. I take pride, and it really in our book, we talk about how your money can either be in a taxable position where you pay taxes on your growth every year. It could be in a tax deferred position, meaning you pay taxes later in life. Those are typically your retirement accounts. You don't pay any taxes while it's growing and investing, but when you pull it out in retirement, when you need it the most, that's when you pay your taxes. And then there's several accounts where you can invest and grow money completely tax free as long as you follow the rules. And a lot of people don't know that. They might hear of different type of accounts and investments, and they're like, "Oh, let me just do this, let me just do that." And they don't, I tell people like, we got to figure, understand taxes, because the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, determines how much of any of your money you get to keep. I want to make sure that I'm growing my wealth from a tax, from a strategy, from a tax perspective as well. And then the other part about building wealth is understanding inflation. Like we heard that big I word, inflation, and interest rates over the last couple years because our inflation went through the roof. Surprisingly, that actually wasn't nothing compared to like the mid 70s through early 80s. The inflation rates back then were about almost 25%. When we were dealing with inflation 2 years ago, it hit a little over 9%. So it wasn't even as bad as it has been in the past. But, when you're building wealth, you have to factor in taxes, you have to factor in inflation. And you just, again, this is why it's super important to have a professional who can guide you through those things.
I love how you called it the sexy side of money, because that is the more fun part to kind of watch
Hmm.
your means grow and know that you're being proactive in that process. Way earlier in the conversation, you had made the analogy of it being like a house with a foundation. Would
Hmm.
you say that some of the earlier milestones, like if your finances have been handled like most everybody else's, not in the best way, not in the
Hmm.
most financially literate way, could we say then that getting the financial education, making the emergency fund, doing the debt management, all of that is more like correcting those cracks in the foundation, maybe like tearing out rotted walls. And then once we get into the portion where we get to build the wealth and then further on, that's when it's really like creating that new house for yourself once you've dealt with the rot and the decay from before, i.e.
Yeah.
your unfortunate past with money. I'm talking about me, guys, don't worry, no judgment here. Would that be like a safe comparison to extend that analogy?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for bringing me back to that point. It is, I'm talking the way going through these things is building that foundation, and then once that foundation is laid, then you can build on top of that. And so, one thing I didn't mention was that when we're talking about wealth, because a lot of times I meet with folks, and the first thing that they want to do is an invest. That's milestone number 6. I'm like, hold on now, hold on, wait a minute. Do you have life insurance? You don't have life insurance? I'm not investing any money for you. Because let's talk about that scenario. Let's say you gave me $5,000 to invest, whatever that is. I can invest that money for you, but then you pass away. Your family only gets, $5,000 plus a little gains, versus if you had a life insurance policy, they probably would have gotten $500,000, and so that's something, like Owista, when you were asking me earlier, like that's another way that I put it into perspective of like, we you can invest money, and most times people are starting off small and slow and steady, so your investment is not going to grow to anything significant right away overnight. That's why it's important to have that foundation first, because that protects the bigger what if in life. Your investment and you growing wealth, milestone number 6, is just like the icing, the cherry on top. It's just that little added extra bonus. So yeah, Brooke, like just like you mentioned, we lay the foundation and then we build from that. So milestone number 6, I tell people like, I'm not investing no money for you unless you have these other things done, because I'm not doing my job if I'm letting you invest your money and then you die tomorrow and then your family gets back, whatever your initial investment was. So yeah, thank you for for bringing that back full circle.
Absolutely. So then we've gone through the first 6 milestones. We got to kind of the fun one on number 6. What is number 7? What's that final milestone?
Yes. So milestone number 7 is us putting the roof on the house. So everything else has been built. The roof is the last thing that we put on, and that is protecting your legacy. So protecting your legacy is having the legal documentation in place to where all your assets are protected for when, let's say, you have a lawsuit or from creditors or even from divorce. But more importantly, if I'm no longer here, who gets my wealth? Who gets my assets, my property? I always tell folks it makes no sense to make all these good, smart decisions. You've been doing so great with milestone 1 through 6, and we don't do milestone number 7, which is having those proper documents in place. A will basically says if you pass away, who can handle your affairs, who can close out your account, who can finish distributing your assets and finalizing, everything that you had in your estate. Some situations might require a trust to be established. This offers maximum protection of your assets, not only at death, but more importantly, while you're alive. Protecting your assets, making sure your home transfers to the people that needs to transfer to, making sure your children or grandchildren actually receive the financial benefit of all your hard work, because that's what we're doing this for, right? Like, we want to live great in this lifetime, but when I'm said and done, I have 3 children who depend on me. I want them to be well taken care of if I'm no longer here. And the way that I ensure that happens is by having my estate planning done. Power of attorney documents might be something that needs to be done. Living wills, healthcare directives. These are all, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, but we definitely work with many across the country who can help you make sure you just button up those things. Because I can't tell you the horror stories that I've heard and seen. And I think we've all experienced this in one way or another where, like grandma's house, they lost the house after she passed away, or you have a relative that nobody knew, they come in and they take everything, or maybe there was some monies left over, but there was no will, which means there was no direction on what happens to that legally, and your family has to go through probate. They have to go to a court, to a judge, and pay all these lawyer costs and high fees, and have a judge who knows nothing about you or your family determine who gets what and when they get it. I don't want no one to make those decisions but myself. And so milestone number 7 again is putting the roof on the house, making sure all of your financial decisions are protected, all of your wishes are observed, and that the hard, good decisions that you made, that your family will truly see the legacy on the other end of that.
Thank you so much. It has been incredible having you on the podcast once again to share all these amazing helpful tips. I mean, I feel like Brooke and I were finally, because we were just talking about it, like we finally feel like we're finally getting, financially smarter. We're making right decisions. We've got our goal. And then after having this conversation, I'm like, okay, I got to go back to the drawing board, got to go fix some things. And I think that's the wonderful thing about this is that it's okay if you have to retouch up your plan. It's okay to have conversations about it. If you can't talk about it, like, us on a podcast, find a financial professional, find someone that can help you in those decisions, because I think I'm probably going to take the next step of doing that to kind of help me even be more efficient in that. So thank you so much for sharing not only your story but helpful tips, and hopefully tips that will help all of our listeners. Before Brooke closes it out, I do want to touch in earlier, you mentioned resources. Can you tell us a little bit more about your free resources? I didn't want to throw off your flow earlier, but I would love to hear about those resources.
For sure. So I would encourage everyone, use me, take advantage of me. I'm not here to solicit myself, but we have plenty of free resources. You can go to my website, which is howmoneyworks.com/Chantay W. Moore. I'm sure the ladies will post a link for to the podcast. But on my website, we have a link. There's a tab for books, so you can go and request a copy of one of the books. I encourage you and at least download the ebook because I only have like a few of these. So I'm happy to send them out, but I only have a few where I can send out a free copy. But download the ebook and just start reading and getting that information there. Also on my website, we have tabs that shows just like it talks about the rule of 72. There's videos, there's so many different little educational nuggets on there. And then if anyone wants to connect with me, my contact information is on the website. Feel free to connect with me over email. You can schedule a consultation with me. And again, it doesn't have to be me. I always encourage folks, find someone that you like, because you're dealing with your money, so you want to like that person who's helping you, but someone that you know and trust who can help you through, help you on your financial journey. So I'm happy to be a resource, and please at least go and download the ebook. I am on all social media, so on my social media, especially my YouTube channel, like I record financial education topics, webinars all the time where I dive deep into, oh, what is a Roth IRA? What is annuity? Just very unique, specific topics that people want to learn about. And then I can point you in a direction. Maybe if I can't help you, I could probably point you to someone close by you, who's local to you that you can go and work with as well.
All right. Absolutely amazing, Shantae. Thank you again so much for your time today. Thank you for all the amazing tips. We are going to be sure to include those resources with the episode description, folks. And I'm happy to report that you can hear more from Shantae on our Cathedra webinars. So we have some past ones with her in the archives, but we are going to be doing a lot more in our upcoming fiscal year. So you guys can be on the lookout for her first one at the start of December. So be on the lookout for that. And that brings us to the end of this episode, you guys. Again, huge thank you to Shantae. And as always, thank you for listening to the Hope Thinga podcast. If you enjoy our show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Please also visit our website, nativelearningcenter.com. You can find more information on upcoming webinars and trainings, and feel free to contact our website with any episode ideas that y'all want to see us explore in future recordings. Be sure to come back for more content. And until then, this has been Brooke, Awista, and Shantae, and we hope to connect with you again really soon. Thanks so much, you guys.